I'm George Pulliam of Knightdale. Came to Knightdale in 1968 as pastor of Knightdale Baptist Church and served there as pastor for 31 years. And it's been a great pleasure to meet and honor today to share with the great person of Eastern Wake program, to be with my dear friend John Bruce Parrish, who I've known since 1968. One of the first activities I participated in after coming as pastor in just a couple of weeks was at the fire department. And I remember being invited to that, and they were preparing for their fundraiser because it was all a volunteer program at that time.
Yes, I believe it was in the year of '57, I'm not sure. I worked for a company that has 14 stores in 3 states. I had to travel a whole lot. I found out that being the chief, I wasn't there enough, so I didn't serve but 1 year, but we had a kind of tough time. Money was short back then. Our first engine was a GMC, a Navy surplus that we got from Yorktown, Virginia. And Mr. Perkinson lives in the old big house up the end of Hester Street here, loaned us the money. I think it was $1,800. And to buy it, and of course didn't have a cab on it. And it's tough answering fire calls without a cab. I've driven the thing quite a few times in thunderstorms, and but we had at one time like 41 members, and we were real active.
How long did you serve as a?
I served 30 years.
30 years.
30 years, and my car here in the yard, I never took the key out of it, and it never got stolen. I could get out of bed and get to the firehouse, which is just about 600 feet away, in less than 60 seconds, which was pretty good at the middle of the night. And at one time, I had the phone in my house to answer the fire calls. And that gets a little thorny people trying to tell you the house is on fire.
Yeah, I'm sure of that, but I'm sure that the community was thankful and grateful to have the fire department right here in the community.
Well, it wasn't only town people, it was rural people, and participated. We'd have big barbecues, and like 32 hogs in each year, and cook 16 a day, and get everybody in the community down and cut it up that night. It worked out very good for us.
Well, it was a good fundraiser, and also people contributed, I'm sure, in other ways too. But you not only were a great servant there, but you also served our country in the Navy.
I served first on a destroyer escort, which was the USS Pennywell, and we shook down in Cape Hatteras in October. And of our crew, like 217 members, there was only like 12 that ever been to sea. And you can imagine a bunch of sailors out there, the seasickness, and the chart hole was up in the bow, and as the ship would dip, it would unlatch the benches they were sitting on. It wasn't anything with just a hooked latch, and food and people would go everywhere, and the guy next to you would have a sick stomach, and he would be vomiting in his plate and your plate.
Wasn't too good.
Yeah, but we served convoys in the Atlantic, and we had a whole lot of runs on sound, but never confirmed that we sunk a submarine, a German sub. But I know on one occasion we were assigned to escort the forestack of Memphis. They were light cruiser. There was 11 of those cruisers, and they were named after capital cities: Raleigh, Richmond, Detroit, Atlanta. And they were trying to stop Germany from hauling raw rubber out of Portugal, South Africa. And they'd go over there and patrol. Well, the DE would go along in case you had submarine.
Right.
And on the 4th of July of '44, the cruiser shot up a bunch of shells and a lot of noise, and our skipper decided he wanted to celebrate. So he loads 4K guns, which is 300-pound depth charges, and some of them were up midship. and shot them all off with a tooter whistle. And he forgot he didn't have but 2 engines out of 4 running. And those things went off. I was on watch in the rear engine room, and deck plates broke loose and coming up, gate valves broke, oil line broke. And he had called us on the fantail before we accepted this responsibility, that if that ship broke down, that we weren't going to get any more liberty. So, but he apologized for that. He was the guy, he was a 27-year man. Then they decided they'd decommission those ships and give them or sell them to the Brazilian government. So we come into Natal, Brazil, and went through the services. We had to find our way back to the States for reassignment. We got on a PBM, and we flew up the Amazon River for miles and miles. An old PBM being a seaplane, you stay over water all you could. Take 3 days to fly to Miami. And of course, the ship was not pressurized, so you had to stay below 12,000 feet. But that was quite an experience. Those old things, the engines were really, really past due for replacement. But then I got assigned to a tug, a yard tug, and it's the first time that I went to school in Cleveland, Ohio for like 6 weeks. And they put a list of vessels on the board. The one you want to serve on, put your name by it. And I put my name by the tug, and they say, you got it. So we sailed Okinawa and worked Okinawa while the kamikazes were so bad. We were the first vessel to the Pennsylvania when it got sunk in Buckner Bay. And 20 chiefs died in that. But those kamikazes, they were something terrible. And when they would get notice of coming in, the Navy would set off smoke screens to try to cover 200 or 300 ships that were berthed in Buckner Bay. And but then they never could cover them all, and Japanese planes would come in. And I understand that out of a squadron of 54 destroyers, 52 of them got hit. So we were really bad. But I think the worst thing I ever been through, including heart surgery, was Typhoon Louise. Typhoon Louise, the Navy lost 280 vessels in that storm. And should that not, we tried to invade Japan, it would have hindered the invasion, because that was the supply vessels and barges and
John, in your Navy experience, you got a commendation for saving your ship. What was that story?
And the typhoon, it was so violent. It came across and then came back across, and keeping the engines running. The barometric pressure was below 27 inches, and you can imagine the wind blowing 200 miles an hour, but you can't get enough pressure to run an engine, and the engine is just piling out smoke, overheating, because we drew 12 feet of water and it was thrown inside the water, so I couldn't keep air out of my pumps. And I had other engineers, but they were all sick. They couldn't, motion sick, and they tied themselves in their bunk. And there was one quartermaster that mastered it. He also got a commendation for saving the vessel, and I'll never forget. We had one sailor from Indiana that every sentence was profanity. I mean, every sentence had profanity. I saw him get on his knees to pray, and he had that profanity right in that prayer, but it evidently the Lord must have heard him, because out of the 280 vessels sunk or beached, we were just 100 feet long, and we survived it.
So it was keeping the engines as best you could.
Oh yeah, well, I told the skipper I need to shut them down. They were overheating. He said, can't do it. He said, can't shut them down. And I found out later that he disappeared. Evidently he got real sick. That quartermaster, which moved it to England, I haven't been in touch with him lately, but he also got a commendation. But I tell you, that was worse than heart surgery. Of course, we served first in Lady Bay. We tow booms on barges to aircraft carriers and things. And first you tow in a big piece of wood called a camel to keep the vessels from bumping together while they were loading and unloading. And they tow those in, but then we go back in the backwaters and get those booms, and they were piled on barges like logs, and we tie them alongside and we'd play on them, and it wouldn't make a difference. One went off, they'd all go off. So, but that was some experience. I guess I was the only first class petty officer in the Navy with a stateroom. I had a stateroom aboard the tug, and that was interesting.
Well, that was good. I'm sure you deserved it to have that.
Well, I don't know about that, George.
Yeah. Well, after you, I came to Nidell, it wasn't too long after that you decided to beautify the town a little bit with flower gardens. And if I remember correctly, you first started them and then had some volunteers to help you, but...
Well, there was a committee, the Town Parks and Beautification Committee, and we had a lot of good people, Brenda Haley, Judy Biggerstaff, Charles Bullock would go off and haul trees in. He'd quit his work and go off and go all down and almost to Fayetteville and pick up trees. I never forget, we sold a lot of trees because you couldn't buy them now wholesale for what these people sell them for, but there was one old straggly tree had a bird nest in it, and this lady, she just had to have that one with that bird nest in it. But until we sold another one, the lady said she put it up in the house and black bugs were everywhere.
Well, I heard a lot of people talk about the fact that you had such a green thumb, you know, they talk about that, and I said, no, you didn't have green thumbs, you had bruised knees, because I saw you down on your hands and knees tending those flower gardens.
We had a lot of good help, especially at planting time. I tell you, we have 40 or 50 flats of flowers to put out, and they would.
And some of the areas are still maintained, but not by committee anymore.
Yeah.
Different groups.
Yeah.
Of course, you do yours out here.
Yeah. Brendan, her garden club.
Garden club does
take
some
care
of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of the others. Yeah. Well, let's turn to another place where I know you're more familiar and more active in my estimation, and that's the church, because you were very, very active all these years that I was there. And soon after I came, about a year or so later, we were asked to go live on the radio. And your brother had the radio station, and we did it through the telephone line for a couple of years before we got a wireless transmission. But I deeply appreciate that service. I remember the one time that we told the church that we'd always have a service since we were live on the radio, despite the weather. And one time we had an ice storm, and you and I were the only ones that showed up. I wore my golf shoes that had the steel spikes on the ice from the house up, and you got there, and from the balcony, you were in the balcony and I was in the pulpit, the only two in there for that service that day. But we cut it short, but didn't
George,
do anything.
you always showed up. You always showed up. You never went on vacation. You're always back on Sunday.
Yep.
I don't know if people today have that kind of dedication or not, but
well, you certainly had it in all regards. Anything that goes wrong, even you were telling me about doing some work this past week and doing work on the refrigerator and air conditioner or something up there they called you about.
well, we had chime this week, and air conditioning, and of course there's always something. When you got three big buildings, there's always something. I don't care if the building's new, there's a lot of maintenance on it. I think we have like 20 air conditioners that we look after. Of course, we don't put refrigerant in them. We get Tracy Banks, which he does a good job for us there. And I have some real good workers. Bobby Harrell, Nelson Crowder, Sam Mays, Jerry Hall, Donald Jonas, Steve Peters, Mike Chalk keeps our campus looking sharp. I tell you that. He's always behind the scene, but he always does his work. Every Saturday up there cleaning up, and he does a good job for us. And we got a new pastor. He's doing a good job. He's well liked. Trent Sessoms, we're real proud of him. Things are going well right now.
When are you planning on retiring from your job there, though?
I'm like you. When I fall dead, that's when I'm going to retire.
I imagine so too. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we were able to have this time together and reminisce a little bit. Do you have any other good, early memories of Knightdale? Your dad?
Yeah, my family moved here in 1926. I was 2 years old, and all this back in here was woods. Wiley Robinson had built a big shop at the corner of Heston Robinson Street, and the house down on Salinger is where we lived for some time. My dad was a blacksmith, and of course there wasn't never much money in blacksmithing. My personal life, my wife and I got married on the 27th of December in '46, and we went, had a job down in Wallace, North Carolina. Had to go to work the first day of '47, which is what, a 4-day honeymoon, you know. But I had a job, diesel mechanic for $1 an hour. And we worked there 5 months. I got the service manager's job, but we had a lot of crawler tractors and service power units and engines. But we left here on an old ragged 41 Ford and $12, not knowing where we were going to spend the night. But the lady across the street from where we worked let us have an apartment without paying her. And found out that they withheld a week's pay. You had to have 2 weeks before I could get paid. $12 buy a lot of beans, you know.
Those are the good old days, weren't they?
Absolutely.
You don't want to go back to them, do
Absolutely.
you? Would you like to go back to those good old days?
I wouldn't mind it a bit. My company, North Carolina Equipment Company, I worked there 47 years. And I was general service and technical supervisor. Done a lot of traveling. Went to Korea twice in the 90s. I went to Poland in the 90s. Honda, which manufactures all kinds of construction equipment, they invited me over to appraise a tractor they wanted to market in the United States. And I flew over there, and I had 10 days one-on-one anywhere I wanted to go in South Korea. And went through where they build a huge engine. The engine is like 74,000 horsepower a piece. And that's a whole lot of engines. They were building a huge propane tank and had 4 big balls on it when I was there. The first group I went with was a VIP tour with customers, like 210 of us. And they took and trained their women workers to put us on a big show with equipment. And I got a tape of that. I want to show you that sometime. Equipment driving under equipment, and those ladies had about 10 days to get ready, and they done a wonderful job. But when we went to Poland, Komatsu had bought Dresser, and they started manufacturing machinery in an old Russian tank plant. And we drove up there, the 2 Russian soldiers wouldn't let us in the building. And it took about an hour to get in, or we got in, we found out why there was 2 Russian tanks in there. But once you got in the building, you could see what you wanted to. And, but that was a good experience. We were going over to Oshkosh to see that, but the leader of our group decided after about we were within 20 miles of it, he didn't want to go, so we turned around and came back. But life's been good to me. I've had a wonderful life, good friends, good neighbors.
You deserve every goodness that you've had. I know from personal experience that there's no finer person in eastern Wake or in Wake County than John Bruce Parrish has been to me and to my family. Well, there are not many people that care for the community in which they live except their own little plot, so to speak. But you cared so much that you've given so much through all of these years to the town, to the community. And why does a person do this? Because it was all volunteer and service.
George, I think it's for the love of the people, and I think we've always had a good town council. The taxes have been low here. I've always had a loving family, a loving church family, and it's just good to be among them.
And in all of this, there's not a more humble person who lives his faith. And John has a great deep faith in God and service to him and to his community and to his country. And I'm grateful and thankful for all I've received from it, John, myself.
George, you wouldn't have been up past
This is
30
about you.
years unless you'd have been an outstanding person.
Well, this is about you, John. John B. I call him John B. He never did want me to call him Mr. Parrish because he said that was his dad. So it's been a joy to know you all these years.
Been a joy to know you, George.